It should be easy as we just plug it in and plug it in. Oh. Hi there, thanks for stopping by again everyone. Last week's episode we took care of the SNES Junior, installing and building a board for a friend of mine, Yoshi Console Mods. This was his particular board and we installed it in Super Derek's SNES Junior, which will be getting sent out to you this week. It was great fun and thanks for everyone involved, couldn't have done it without you. This week we're going to be taking a step back to where we were previously, and that is the PSP home console. Now in specifics it's going to be building a controller out of this to go into this. But as you may have already seen, we were talking about having to solder onto this. Well, I've got good news for everyone involved who's a bit scared of doing tight soldering jobs. I've actually been able to develop a harness for this so you won't have to perform any soldering inside the PSP itself and you can do it directly to a little harness, giving you a lot more flexibility and removing the chances completely of bricking the console if you stuff up the soldering job. So, without crapping on too much about that, I'm going to reference back to the part where you can steal this ribbon cable from, and it's actually from the PS2 that you're going to be taking apart to build the mod, so that's great news. But I have also found where we can get these cables and they're about $6 on eBay. So anyway, let's get straight into it, and thanks again for stopping by as we embark on episode 3, part 3, do-it-yourself at-home modifications. Thanks guys. Right, so thanks for tuning in again. Last time we were actually taking this apart and getting it ready for pinning out, right? As you can see here I have a harness in there and we were actually talking about soldering into it. Now I really have to thank Super Derek RPGs over on the other side of the world for this one, because he wrote in the comments in the last video, why not try and make a breakout harness for people at home, make it a lot easier. So I've been doing some research, right, and well, for starters you need to know, don't ever try to solder onto these because they just won't work. They're metallized plastic, okay? They just won't handle any heat and you won't get a solder to take to it either, and it'll burn a hole straight through it. So please just heed my warning on that and just take my word for it. But there is another solution, and it was staring us right in the face the whole time. Have a look at this, right? And if it doesn't ring any bells, check episode 3 part 1 of this and you'll see the laser drive. We were actually disassembling a PS2 and this cable came out of it and was actually damaged, right? Well, these are a perfect pin match for these harnesses. They actually line up perfectly and they are essentially just a metallic version of those. So what you do is you just count the cores you need and run your hobby knife, blade, Stanley blade, whatever you guys call it, down here to the correct amount of cores, and you strip it and pick each one off. Now the great thing about this is, and I'll show you later how it works, is one of these does half a PSP, and I found on eBay for $6 you can get 10 with free shipping. So if you're any good you can do quite a few of these and make a few mistakes in the process. But what I love about this, and I can't thank you enough again, is the versatility of it. You just can unplug it and plug it back in like this. Therefore not having to physically modify your PSP, making it, if you ever change your mind to make it portable again, you just unplug those pieces and plug your originals back in, right? So you're good to go. Anyway, so what we're going to start with is building the directional pad, which this is it here, but I'm going to show you step by step on building that. Then we're going to go to the analog pad, the analog joystick, sorry, and pinning that out. This one's done here. Slightly different, but the same principle applies with that one. Then we're going to do the power harness to the switch, and the X, square, circle, triangle, and right shoulder button. And then there's some home buttons down here out of this little harness. Okay, so basically you just cut what you need off these and solder off the end of them and you're good to go. Okay, so anyway, I'm sorry, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment, but we'll just get straight into it, and we'll start building, and then we'll go into doing a controller. So we'll actually take all these physical wires out of these and pin them into the pre-made controller we've got done, which is a PS2 controller, and do a bit of playing on it. And the next part will be taking care of the video output and mounting the unit into the board, into the PS2 itself, and also 3D printing a new custom shell for it, which will be fairly cool. You don't have to do this 3D printing thing, but I'm doing it just to make it look extra cool and custom for Jared. So anyway, without carrying on too much, let's get straight into it. Thanks guys. Alright, so I'm just going to show you in real time how to actually prepare a harness and get it split for the correct amount of pins. So you're going to need one of these, or a decent scalpel or something like that with quite a thin blade, and I need 14 pins, right? So I'm using this really fine tip pen. I'm just gonna do each one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and I would suggest triple and even double checking that. And that's going to be all the pins you use. Next, what you're going to want to do is get your Stanley knife. They're called Stanleys over here, or whatever you want to call them. And on the edge of the 14th pin, put a slight incision in like this. Make sure it's fairly sharp. Okay. Turn it over and bend this piece till it splits like I've done here. Right, next step, remove your tape that you've put on and just begin to gently peel, and it should do what it's doing here and peel away without breaking down that 14. Follow this the whole way along the end of the ribbon cable, then you'll have a harness made. Then we'll go into pinning it out and soldering it out. But this is the basic fundamental of how you're going to do all these harnesses, okay? So next thing I'm going to do from here is actually jump over to doing building a D-pad harness for you, but I was just showing you an example of how to cut it. Okay, so take your time and be very careful with this, because, well, you're limited to what you have unless you buy extra stuff, right? So use every piece you can. What's left over here would easily work, for instance, for a D-pad harness. So you could get both D-pad and all the buttons out of this, right? Okay, anyway, the analog one doesn't require you to actually do this. You can use the existing harness because it's a copper, but the only thing that's actually going to need one is the home buttons and stuff like that. That's where you're going to need that extra piece, alright? And for the video output, you're going to need it too. Okay, so anyway, I'll tear this up and I'll bring you over to the next part, which is building a D-pad harness. So now you see this cable here that's been put on to this copper harness here. So what we're going to do is get our meter on ohms on the bell test and just check that we've actually got continuity across here before we go any further, because this harness is really delicate. So I've even nicked it a bit pulling it apart here, but if it's fine, it's fine. We just check to see that we've got continuity. And that there's no other beeps on any of the pins, because the moment there's beeps on the other pins, you've got bad news. But that one's okay. So I'll just hook into the next one, and I'll do say 5 of these, and I'll show you how to do one live, because it's very time consuming. But I'll get all 6 of these traced out with use a blade if you've got one, or a scalpel, and just slowly remove each layer and stagger it back so that you can't have the possibility of shorts. I've got like heaps of room to go all the way back to here, so you just keep on continuing back as you go. This one you're looking at here anyway, I've already mentioned before, but this is the D-pad, okay, and the left shoulder button. Right, you can see I have 6 here, and I've already broken one trying to scratch it back, so we're going to have to take it back from here. So what we'll do is line it up here, and we're going to take Just make a small scratch on it like this. Be very gentle because they're very weak. Just not to catch the edges. You only need okay. Now if you can see that, the copper's exposed, right? So next thing we want to do is get our meter on ohms. Put it on beat test. Check that we got continuity from the scratch part to here, right? So we get our lead. That's good. Right. Get a tiny bit of flux. Just dab it on the end of this. It's going to help your wire stick to this. It's not the best stuff to solder to, so get your soldering iron next and get your solder out. And get it lined up with it. Heat it up very slowly and then just, you won't get heaps on there, but you'll get enough to do the job. You can see now there's a bead of solder there. Next, get your 30 AWG wire, bring it to the position where you've placed your solder. Actually dip it in a bit of flux again. You just need lots of flux for this. You want a good join because there's barely any connection between the solder and the wire, really. It's all, and then just sit it on there and heat it. And that's it, it's done. So what we'll do now is grab our multimeter again, get it on there, on the wire, to the pin. And there you go. Oh, and also what you would do is just get your wire and just brush it along like that, so that you know you've got no shorts. That's it, that's a completed harness. Righto. Now I showed you how to make a harness, let me explain how they work. So the one we're looking at here that you've just actually seen me make is this one. And that controls the up direction, the down direction, the left direction, the right direction, the L shoulder controller. Now, the problem here is, right, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inputs, right? Plus there's 2 extra pins left over. Now what those extra pins are is a ground. Okay, so what happens is when you close a direction or an input with the ground, it completes the circuit, right? And then it makes the input select. So that's pretty simple, all said and done, right? But your problem is, as I was saying before, we can't now use these. You can't solder onto these pads or anything, and it's honestly quite difficult to solder onto these. Yes, you can do it, but what happens is you render your PSP quite useless because you actually have to take this piece of the harness off, which is your compression clamp. Now if you do that, you can no longer hold a cable in there, right? And you've got a good chance of shorting them out. This is really close together. Okay, let me zoom right out and you'll understand. Like, it's up there. So anyway, we'll get to the next part, and what we're going to look at here is this one. It's the second harness you're going to make. Now, flip this over. What this consists of is your triangle, your square, your X, your circle, and your right hand shoulder button, right? So once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus 2 grounds. That equals 7, right? Well,
where you may be looking at the difference here is the one's a lot bigger, right? So what you actually have to do is get one of your harnesses that you've been making and cut it for 14, right? And what I'll show you right now is why. If we come right into here, I have another one here that I was playing around with to do the grounding. Now, there's another 7 on here, right? So, on, off, LED on, LED hold, that's 4. And the hold itself, that's 5 plus 2 grounds again, right? So that's 5 plus 2 is 7. So you combine that total amount and you've got 14 pins. So all you have to do is one 14 pin harness comes out of here, split it down the middle at the end, bring one directly into the switch, and the other one pins out the 7 wires for your circle, X, square, triangle, R. Right now, the first half, this half, is your input buttons, and this part here is your on off. Don't confuse them, the unit won't work. You won't damage it, but it won't work. Now, the problem with these, right, is I'll show you something here. This is where you'll encounter most of your problems back on this part here, right? This harness in particular, there's several variations, even across the same model type numbers. The pin configurations can be different, right? Not majorly, but you're really just going to have to pin it out for yourself, okay? So, just work it out. You'll run some wires off. You know that this right hand side is always going to be your on and off section, but the actual physical way they're inputted is different sometimes, so you'll find that out easy, and you can't damage it. Just go through and ground your buttons, see what each one does. All right, so next one we're going to look at is this one here, and in particular this is one of the most crucial parts that we need to do to make it consolized, and that harness includes these, right? A home button, volume down, volume up, square. Sorry, that's the this is probably one of the most important ones of the whole mod. Sorry, I was just glazing over it. That is actually the component output button. So if we're going to need to have this one as part of the mod. The music menu, probably not. Start and select, definitely. So what you're going to want is 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons off there, right? And the TV will control your volume up and down, okay? Because now it's consolized, so we won't worry about that. But this will now go onto our R2 on our controller. So we hold this down for 3 seconds, and after we turn it on, and it will component out of the back of the PS2 through a normal component leads, and actually give us our component out signal, right? Okay, so what you're going to have here again is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus once again 2 grounds. So you've got a total of 9 on this harness, but you're only going to need to utilize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 3 will not be used. You're going to have to go through once again and work what they are out. But anyway, moving on. There's one last one, and it's probably one of the most crucial, but one of the easiest to do. Right, probably the only other one that needs being shown how to make is the analog joystick, right? Okay, so here it is on the top, here it is on the bottom, here's the board disassembled, and here's what you'll actually... I've got several of these. They're not very expensive to get replacement joysticks, but to get a solder onto it, you need to unpull this harness off here like I've done by taking this apart and that. Now you're not going to use it again, right? But you can do it one of 2 ways. But honestly, scraping back that's going to be an absolute nightmare to get into, okay? Just being honest with you. So I've decided to dismantle the joystick on this one, being that I have plenty. But if you don't want to do that, that's fine, and you can scrape the back of it and still keep the joystick intact. Okay, so anyway, without crapping on, let me show you how to do this. But what consists in this one is a ground, a Y-axis, an X-axis, and I think it's an analog input of some kind, or a 5 volt. I'm not really sure, I've got to measure that out. But I know basically you can't really stuff this up if you, it's just a matter of experimenting to get it the right way around. All that's going to happen is if you mess up these 4, it'll either not work. One of the possibilities is to not work. The other possibility is it'll be inverted and it'll do all sorts of weird things. But you'll know once you got it, okay? Like I said, there's no guidebook to doing this, or there's no handbook on how this is done, because it's all getting done right now. So anyway, let me show you how to make this part. It's fairly easy.
Nicely done.
Right, so as you may be able to begin seeing, my workspace is getting a bit cluttered here, right? So what we'll do is head upstairs and I'll show you how to actually build the controller itself, the pinning it all out, this part you see here, and then we'll actually be back at this stage and play on it, and I'll test it on a game called Sonic Rivals 2 and just play a stage for you guys and see how it all works. And if that all goes really nice and good, we'll in the next episode we're gonna take care of harnessing this all out, component video output, tidying it all up and getting it ready for a finished package. And then hopefully, if the timing works out right, we'll have some 3D printing put in as well. But anyway, let's get on to the building, and I'll come back with a deeper explanation on how this all works once you've seen this little segment.
We're headed upstairs and we're just about to desolder this ribbon cable here. It links to the analog joysticks, doesn't it? Great job. Okay, so now the analog joystick's been desoldered, we're going to move on to these vibration motors. So what you're looking at right now is the D-pad, and we're going to take some tracks and we're going to cut into them for soldering and make a common ground. And then the other side of it, those 4 pads you're looking at in the middle, these are going to be our signal wires, up, down, left and right. And also above that, it's the left hand shoulder button. So we'll get started and start cutting in. Now we're going to start cutting into the ground plane. Oh, nice. Exposing that so we've got something to solder to. Do not snort this stuff. Sorry, very bad joke. So now we're scraping back the conformal coating so we have a path to solder onto for our up directional button. So it's going to expose the track and solder onto it. And we'll repeat the same thing for all the other buttons. It's quite grainy, this footage. There we go. Okay, so we've removed the 7.5 ground VDD, DI, DOCS, CLK and ALK tracks by cutting them out, and we're going directly to the button pin pads now, and they've all had solder dogs put on them, so we're ready to start attaching cables. Okay, so now we're linking all the grounds together for the buttons, soldering onto this point here. And soldering onto the ground ring, right?
Onto the ground track, yep.
Yeah. And then he's going to link that across to that ground plane. Now we're going to solder on the signal wire for L1 over here and carry on from there. He's just going to put all of them on for us while we do it.
Done.
Excellent.
So,
Josh and I have just finished soldering the wires for these boards in, and we'll flip it over to show you. They come out of the back here, ready to go into where we're going to junction them in for our controller wire. Alright, and then we're going to move over to the other side and do the input buttons, the triangle, square, circle, X, and the R1 button, and then make some room for some home buttons, and start select will also be done, and we're going to also get the one for the video output. Alright, cool. Okay, so what we're going to do next is cut the traces linking from the chip here away, and then expose our pads for soldering again. Use these same 4 here, pretty much exactly the same process repeated, and tackling into R1 here. Should be good to go, so we'll get into that and get back once it's done. So now we have it all pinned out on the up, down, left, right, triangle, circle, square, X, L1 and R1 are ready for the start select button, and the analog buttons R2 and L2 will be our home and our video output button. Alright, so get into those next.
right, so what you're seeing right here is I'm just having a bit of a play with this controller in the state it's in. Obviously a later period we'll put it all back in its case and wire everything in through here, but I'm just doing a proof of concept right now, making sure it all works. So as you can see here, I'm pressing the X button, or what is the X button here, and just skipping the dialogue because, I mean, to be honest. Anyway, just give it a little bit of a play and see how it goes. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this and found it helpful. There's not exactly a guide on this yet because, well, I haven't seen it done before. If you have seen references, please let me know because that'd be awesome. Anyway, yeah, you can see here I'm running and carrying on. Cool. Jump, jump, jump. Bit hard because nothing's located here at the moment. Anyway, cool lads. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Now, what you'll see next time is we'll component lead out into these and actually utilise the original SNES, the PlayStation 2 port. Controller will come across into here, and we'll have it detachable and properly harnessed up. This is obviously just a testy bodgy mess, and start working on some 3D printing and making it all come up together nice. So, and finalising this in its own little case. So if you've liked this, feel free to leave comments and suggestions on anything you want to see done, or anything that I could do to help you do this at home. Now I know it's fairly difficult, but just take your time with things like this. There's always a way around stuff. You don't have to solder too much on this mod. It's a lot of just wires from A to B, but I won't lie to you, it's fairly difficult. And but at the end of the day too, it's not going to give you the same problems where if you do something it's going to brick a console, so it's fairly good there. Anyway, so thanks very much for tuning in again, guys, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.
Hey guys, Jared from Avalanche Reviews here. If you're looking to have your retro game modification questions answered right here on an episode of Retro Revolutions, and you want to get that exact mod sent to you, email Jared at retrorevolutionsdesigns@gmail.com to be part of an episode just like this.